Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's day 862. This series has gone on for a very long time. It's almost approaching 3 years. Josh keeps growing taller with more leaves. I've removed some of the compost debris after the cantaloupe seedling series, which lasted for only 3 weeks. I uprooted all the cantaloupe seedlings and scattered some of them on the surface on one side of this pot, and they started to look gross. It doesn't decompose fully right away, so it just looks like a bunch of vegetable debris garbage on the surface. I didn't like that, so I just removed all of that as well as a few dead leaves. I'll be doing some cleanup work in this video update, and I'll do some watering at the end. I don't think any additional fertilization and watering is really helping at this point. The main limiting factor is the fact that it doesn't get full sun like its Joshua Tree cousins would get out in the Mojave Desert, in the high desert, with sun for all those hours a day. And they tend to grow on flat ground, so they receive as much sun as possible, unlike plants that would be growing on hillsides, north-facing slopes, etc., or valleys, gullies. These plants like as much sun as they can get, and I can't provide that. So I'm declawing Josh right now, like I'd be clipping the nails on a cat. I've been poked so many times by this plant that it's been getting really annoying, and I'm sick of it. I've been stabbed at least 20 times, maybe a lot more, maybe it's 30 or 40 or 50 times. Most of those are just minor pricks where there's some pain and it reminds me to quickly withdraw, but on other occasions I've been doing camera work or working on other plants nearby, and one time I was wearing gloves and I heard a loud pop as I accidentally palmed one of these blades, and actually the least damaged thing was my skin in my hand. It was mostly, well, the glove burst in that point obviously, and I broke off one of these hardened tips. So those close-ups you got of the hardened tips in this video in the beginning and in many other previous episodes, that's just how Joshua Tree leaves end up. The tip always dies. I think that's by design, so it's sort of a fire-hardened spear tip, so to speak. It's just dead tissue that provides for protection against large mammal predators, potentially, although in the wild I've never seen anything feed on these. I don't think there are any reports of deer or any other large animals having the gall to try to feed on these things. They basically have no predators. I don't see any insect predators on them. So they're just happy to grow at this glacial pace forever and ever. And as I tugged on that, I initially tried to rip off these dead leaves at the base, and it exerted a bit of a pull, a bit of a tug on the main trunk, so I stopped, and now I'm using these clippers. I'm just throwing the tips onto the dirt. Hope that doesn't come back to bite me later. But I'm making things more aesthetic. I've cleaned up most of the garbage, so to speak, on the surface of the soil, the decomposing cantaloupe seedlings. And there's still plenty of debris left, but as long as it looks mostly organic and natural, I'm happy to just leave all that stuff there. And it has moss and other things like algae growing, so it looks aesthetic enough. And with all this clipping, I'll no longer have all of the stab problems. I mean, they don't really generate wounds. Sometimes it will draw a tiny little bit of blood. And then I just go inside and put on some antibiotic cream, ointment, with it's got painkiller in it. So it basically stops the pain more than anything. But in the literature, you'll read that being punctured by Joshua trees and other plants, cacti, especially cholla cacti, can lead to deadly infections, so you definitely want to avoid that. But Josh here has been growing on a very sterile third floor balcony environment in the coastal lowlands for almost 3 years, and I haven't gotten seemingly any infection, or nothing was ever really a risk in my opinion, or danger to me. But it'll be nice to do this for the first time, and it doesn't really affect the aesthetics. It does if you look very close up, but in terms of saving me from being stabbed a million more times, I'm very happy to do this preventative maintenance work. And for some of those new blades coming out, I won't need to touch them for a long time. It seems like the blades have gotten much longer. The plant looks a little more spindly because of it. And because there's no full sun, I think the blades just aren't as broad and as thick as they would be as I see in the wild. But most of those young wild Joshua trees are actually adventitious shoots that come out of the ground from a mother tree, a parent tree. So I think my job is done here. I've clipped almost all these leaves. And back to what I was saying earlier, those adventitious shoots, they get all the nutrition from the parent tree, hence they can be so thick and robust looking coming straight out of the ground. Just watering with some distilled water to rinse off the leaves. And eventually I will fertilize, but since this is a very slow growing plant, I think fertilizing too much would be detrimental. Basically just guesstimate based on how much new biomass and leaf surface area this plant has. It's nothing compared to the passion fruit vine.